see some movement at the takeoff zone. It's Kelly Slater grabbing rail.
Yeah, guy, David. Yeah, guy, it is Spit. It's the Spit Podcast. We talk all things surf. Scott Bass, David Lee Scales with you here this morning. It is January 24th, the year 2024. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Scott. It's a huge week in surf news. I'm shaking up my AG1, drinkag1.com/surf. You got yours there. I'm feeling already like ramped up, ready to go. I am excited for today's show just because there's so much going on in the surf world, but I woke up energized.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you. There's a lot going on, and there's a lot of places we could start.
Well, I think
Let me
there's
tease it by saying we have Stab in the Dark to discuss. We have
Ooh.
massive surf at Pipeline in the Surfline Pipeline Cam. There's some legal news regarding surfers that occurred.
Ooh.
And I don't know what else you have, but there's
What do you
plenty
mean,
more to
what
discuss.
else? Stephanie Gilmore announcing her retirement from the WSL
Oh,
yesterday.
I knew that. I wanted to give you, I needed to.
Okay. Well, the crazy thing is all of this happened yesterday. I mean,
Yeah.
most of it. The day at Pipe yesterday. Stab in the Dark dropped yesterday. Stephanie Gilmore coming off of the news, by the way, from last week, which you and I didn't discuss because you and I recorded on Tuesday, and then Friday, Carissa Moore, gold medal Olympian, 5-time world champ, Carissa Moore announces her retirement from the WSL indefinitely. She may come back. She will compete at Pipe. She might compete in Sunset. She might compete at Tahiti in preparation for the Olympics. That happened on Friday, huge news. And then yesterday, a mere 4 days after Carissa Moore's announcement, 8-time world champ Stephanie Gilmore takes to Instagram to announce she's taking a year off of competitive surfing.
Yeah. Boom. Lots
Huge.
to discuss. Yeah. Do you want to just continue with the Stephanie Gilmore news here?
Yeah, well, this has been, we've discussed this in the months leading up to this, where we're pointing the finger of blame in our previous discussions towards the WSL and their shifting contest format and how it undermines the number one surfer going into the finals day event. The mid-year cut is part of the discussion, but really the focus of the discussion is on finals day. And you have Carissa Moore, who's leading the rankings. All of her year's efforts are in vain. She's leading the year rankings, going into the final event, and then ends up losing on the final day in a surf off. And we were just questioning how long or how many more times she will continue to put a year's worth of effort into the contest if it can all be vanquished in one day, basically. And so when she announced her retirement on Friday, she did not point the finger of blame at the WSL at all. And she specifically said she just, has been competing her whole life and she maybe wants to have a family. She's been married for a few years now and it's time to just shift gears. She's dignified, and I thought it was a super classy exit. She put together a beautiful video showcasing highlights from her career and growing up surfing and talking about the highs and the lows and the challenges and stuff like that. So I thought it was a beautifully poetic, beautifully executed, very dignified exit. But we cannot not look at the WSL and their role in this. And now with Stephanie Gilmore stepping away, you start to wonder if there will be a max exodus.
Yeah, I think it's just a little bit more nuanced than that. As you know, of course, I'm not saying that you're simplifying it, but both Carissa and Stephanie have been on tour a long time. I interviewed Carissa Moore when she was 14 years old at Snapper Rocks. I mean, she's been on tour. That was in like 2002 or something. So
Yeah.
they've both been on tour a long time. Gilmore's 35. And so there's the age thing. Like you don't see any 22-year-olds stepping away from the tour. You see 30-year-olds stepping away from the tour. And that's kind of normal. Like guys get burned out, girls get burned out, and now adding what you mentioned, right? The format with the WSL, which is a little bit problematic and might be enough to make people go, you know what? That on top of that means that I'm out. I've done it. I've got world titles. I'm good. In Chris's case, she has a gold medal. By the way, Gilmore, Stephanie, 35 years old, she's got the number 3 spot on the Olympic surf team. So we spoke about last time, look, the Olympic gold medal is more important than the world title. Let's focus on the Olympic gold medal. When I mean Stephanie Gilmore is behind Tyler Wright and Molly Picklum. Now, there is an opportunity for the Australian team to earn a 3rd women's spot in the Olympics, and that will take place at the World Surfing Games event next month. But it says here in this press release that Gilmore's decision to sit out the season includes the Olympics.
Oh, wow.
So she's not even like thinking about it. She's just like, I'm out.
Yeah.
Give me an album twin fin and, you know, I'm gonna surf Durambaugh for the rest of my life or whatever. So
Yeah.
good for her. Congratulations. I don't feel like there's any coming back when you're 35 years old and you have 7 world titles. And perhaps, you know, there's this, I think people's management teams get around them, these athletes' management teams, and they're like, don't say the R word.
Yeah.
Just say you're stepping back. It's a little cleaner, a little, I don't know if it's classier, but it gives you room if you in fact decide that you're reinvigorated to come back without, like, you know, naysayers going, oh, which is it? You know, retirement or not?
It also opens up the wild card opportunities, which she's already been gifted a wild card in 2025. And I don't know that she would take like a whole season, but I see people like her, like Carissa, like Kelly, absolutely wanting to surf Cloudbreak or Pipeline or J-Bay with very few people in the lineup. And so that, I think they've earned that, and they might take that opportunity.
Yeah, it begs the question, like, are we wasting a spot for a young surfer to come into the scene, or is that just a wasted wild card? Stephanie at 36, you know, what could she do competitively? And I think the answer is she could do a lot, but it's not what you think. It's not maybe win one of these events or make it into the semifinals or the finals of one of the events. I think what she does is she adds pressure onto the young surfers. In other words, if you're a 19, 20-year-old Caitlin Simmers and you've got Stephanie Gilmore in your heat, you need that as a young surfer. You need to feel like the GOAT. You're in the heat with the GOAT, and that will only help Katie Simmers get better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the angle that I see, that it makes sense to give these elder statesmen wildcard spots. It just puts pressure, and it gives the younger surfers a chance to cut their teeth and to feel that pressure and to understand it and then to overcome it.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I don't necessarily agree with them not having a shot at winning an event, especially in waves of consequence. I think those surfers specifically have more of a shot than Caitlin Simmers or other people when Cloudbreak is pumping, Pipe is pumping. I mean, Stephanie Snapper, even, she would dominate, you know? So I think, especially Kelly, it's like Kelly has no reason to compete at Rio or most of the spots on tour, but when the waves are pumping, he is still the guy to beat.
Yeah, look, I love Brazil, but nobody really should be competing at Rio on the WCT.
Felipe.
Oh, yeah.
So this brings to question a larger conversation, is just like, gosh, what is happening with professional surfing in 2024? And we've been kind of pointing at a potential cliff for competitive professional surfing. But Lisa Anderson, in other news, we didn't really discuss last week, but Lisa Anderson is off Roxy. She's a lifelong, Roxy ambassador. She's arguably responsible for building that brand. Certainly the corporate interests who wanted to build the brand built it around her and her image and her surfing and her body, designing board shorts for women, all that sort of stuff. So it's important news that she is no longer on Roxy. It's obviously related to the Authentic Brand Group takeover of Roxy and just a complete shift in what they're doing. So that's understandable. But is pro surfing dying in 2024 is the question here. Martin Potter, former world champ Martin Potter, wrote in Stephanie or Lisa's Instagram post about the departure that it's dead. Kamala Alexander posted an Instagram the day after Carissa Moore's announcement and said, I fully take responsibility for contributing to ruining surfing. As a professional surfer, exploiting spots, driving attention to surfing, getting more people into the water, this is all part of what's ruined surfing. I'll put my hand up to say, I apologize. I take the blame. Vans lays off 42 people this month out of their Costa Mesa office after 500 worldwide in November in an effort to cut $300 million in costs. There are a lot of things happening in surfing right now that are very precarious in the end of times.
Yeah. It, first of all, I don't think that less people in the water. I think the more surfers in the world, the better. And I know that sounds like an old man, which probably is, because I wouldn't have thought this way 15 years ago.
Up until 2 years ago, maybe.
Well, my point is, like, I'm not saying at like Pipeline where Kamalei surfs or on Kauai or Kamalei, or, you know, like obviously there's certain spots that are just overcrowded. But my point is that you and I and your average, you know, COVID surfer that just came into the sport 3 years ago, going out and getting wet and feeling the invigoration of the ocean and the everything that we get out of the ocean that we spoke about ad nauseum, coming in from that and then dealing with our common man in a much happier, much more just open-minded headspace is good for the world. And so I'm kind of taking that global view that I don't know anyone that's gotten out of the ocean and doesn't feel really good and invigorated and then transfers that positive energy onto the person, even if they don't realize it when they're at the grocery store or whatever. And so I'm all for more surfers, believe it or not, just not at your spot. No, but
well,
you get what I'm saying, right?
You're right. And I guess I muddied my kind of diatribe by including Kamalei's statement because the rest of it was focused on professional surfing. Is professional surfing dead? And Kamalei's wasn't professional surfing. Kamalei just said surfing is ruined. And so you're accurate. I agree with what you're saying. It's a good time to be a surfer. It's not a great time to be a fan of professional surfing.
Yeah, I think it's good for the oceans if we have more people in the water, more people that are ocean oriented and are leaning towards conservation of the ocean. Is pro surfing dead? First of all, Vans is it's a shoe company. Shoes might be dead. The shoe market might be oversaturated. You know,
they support professional
Roxy
surfers.
Is a clothing company.
Yep.
They're not surf companies. Yeah, they support surfers. Okay. But they're not, that's not, you know, what's a surf company? That surfboard behind me right there, which is Freeline, Peter Mel's shop in Santa Cruz. That's a surf company. They sell surfboards. That's what surfing is. Surfing is hard goods, surfboards, wetsuits, fins, board shorts, rash guards, helmets, leashes, traction, stuff you need to go surfing. It's thriving. Okay. There's more surfers than ever. So I don't think that the surf industry is dead. Now, I will say, I think it's a massive misstep to not have Lisa Anderson as sort of a lifelong global ambassador for your brand. I mean, I believe Quicksilver, and help me out here, but they still have Tom Carroll on there. And I believe Mark Richards as well.
Mark Richards, yeah.
And that's a smart move. You only need one, especially for those legacy brands, which you and I only relate to. My kid doesn't give a crap about Quicksilver, but you and I, actually, the ones that are actually buying stuff, you know, we have a certain loyalty towards Tom Carroll because he's a great guy, and towards Lisa Anderson because she's a great gal. And so even if you're like, I'm just going to sell my stuff at Costco and Walmart and nobody gives a shit about Lisa Anderson, I still think it's probably pennies on the dollar to keep her on the payroll. Yeah. And it's just super positive. And she's a super positive person. And she's just a great role model. And, you know, I don't know. That seemed like a misstep.
I agree with you entirely. I don't think there's a reason to not share this information, but what I heard was that Quicksilver's global budget for their marketing for their athletes, global athlete salary cap is $1.5 million for 2024.
That's great. Somebody made up that number, some guy with a suit on,
Exactly.
and he
But
screwed up. You can easily make that number 2.5, and it's not going to affect them at all.
no.
And give her $1
And
million a year. Let
yeah,
her
and
live, for God's sakes.
that's in contrast to, of course, the heyday when Dane Reynolds, their one athlete alone, was making $4 million. So it's a huge, huge number or drop. But I agree with the sentiment of what you're saying. I've never been more enthusiastic about surfing and about the surf content that I can consume and the surfboards that I have access to and the wetsuits and the things that I have access to than I am today. And I think that the question of is pro surfing dead that I posed is a stupid question, of course. It's just a clickbait question, but it is reflective of something. What is happening is that the thing has grown so large that the top level of it that is being managed with the most dollars involved, probably, and corporate interest, no longer reflects what's happening kind of at the beach every day or in the shaping bay. And so that's what I'm pointing at. And it's a farce, and it's embarrassing when you see the legacy people like that being kind of discarded. And the new people who are into surfing, if you're buying your surfboard from Costco and you're buying your quote surf clothing, surf brand clothing from Costco right next to your surfboard, then that's one thing. Maybe you're having a good time. I doubt that you're even spending much time at the beach, but whatever. Maybe that's one version of surfing experience. It's a very different thing than going to your local shaper, going into the shaping bay, smelling those smells, by the way, and figuring out like, hey, what's going on right now in design? And he's like, oh, you know what? Ryan Birch made couple boards for Bryce Young last year. I saw this video and they're narrower and they're asymmetrical. And by the way, Mikey Wright rode one in a Quicksilver video from the year that he was shredding on in a way that I hadn't seen him shred before. So now I'm working on this new little design over here. And the waves have been pumping and we've tested it out locally. And so we've made these adjustments and it's in this construction. And so I'd be glad to make one for you. You know what I mean? Like that's an experience. And that's still available. Like that's more available now than has ever been before. There's more shapers, they're more accessible. Like it's still a great time to be a surfer. I'm not seeing much of that reflected on the world tour in terms of, I don't know, or just on that kind of top level of the market that we once kind of looked to as the harbingers of what was happening in surfing.
Yeah. Okay. Next.
Pipeline.
So yeah, Pipeline's been incredible. The Pipeline Cam specifically for you and I, sort of computer users of what's happening there. But there's been 2 days in a row. It was yesterday and the day before of Epic Pipe and the Surfline Cam. They did a YouTube live stream of it, and then gloriously they had a highlights package at the end of each one, so you can just go straight to the end and just see barrel after barrel after barrel after barrel. So kudos to Surfline and that live stream, which they've been doing, as you know, David, for a long time. So that's been just incredible to see the second reef chip-ins. By the way, the sand's gone. The form at Pipe looks incredible. It looks super good. And this all leads us towards, of course, is it the Lexus Pipe Pro or something like that, presented by Lexus? Or anyway, the first CT of the year. The waiting period's on the 29th. It's the 24th today. So in 5 days, this thing could kick off, and Pipeline looks unreal. And I've looked at the forecast, and the forecast looks really good for the first event of the season.
Okay, good. I was curious. Kelly Slater, back from hip surgery, was in the water last night. He got an insane wave at backdoor, which, I guess the hip surgery, He's just paddling into a wave and going straight. So I'm not sure how reflective that is of how his hip is feeling. But the fact that he's in Hawaii now and kind of in the water, I think is a good sign for us who want to see him at Pipe. Interestingly, Gabriel Medina is out in the lineup. Italo is out in the lineup. You know who I didn't see out in the lineup?
Who?
Felipe Toledo. Instead, I saw him post a video of working out in San Clemente while the waves are pumping in Hawaii 1 week in advance of the Pipe Pro. So I think that's notable as we look to set our survival league teams and go into the season.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, fair enough. So you're saying no Felipe on your survival league team. That's what you're telling me.
No,
It makes
not for Pipe.
sense.
I'm going to save him for Rio.
That makes tons of sense.
Yeah, but I agree. Like, so it. Oh, by the way, did you see Shane Dorian's wipeout on that Surfline cam?
Yeah, the backdoor wave.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
He-
Shane got an incredible one as well, but there's one wipeout where it's on like a
Over the
double
falls?
overhead over the falls.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
one's insane.
He's like scratching in and it lurches and he just isn't under the ledge. And so it kind of lurches him as he gets to his feet and he just goes straight over the falls, like head first into the reef with the lip on like a double up. And I'm like, that's when you see waves like that and you're like, okay, that guy's going to die. He's going to certainly get injured. The waves that people actually end up getting injured on never look as gnarly as that did. And the fact that Shane's got to be 50 at this point, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, how does your body survive something like that? Because he got his
He's in
sick
great-
wave after that.
Yeah. No, well, first of all, he's in great shape, obviously. That helps. And I don't mean just surf shape. Like he works out, he eats right, he does everything to make sure that his physical systems are optimum. And so there's that. That definitely helps, right? But what blows my mind is that these guys aren't wearing helmets.
I know.
That blows my mind.
Yeah, it totally does. But anyways, the other insane wave was Iala Dalla. Iala is his name, I believe. EALA, Iala Dalla. Crazy wipeout at Pipe. And Peter King posted a shot of it from the beach.
Yeah.
Do you remember this one?
Oh yeah. It's just next level. Like kind of well, it is a free fall.
Yeah.
And it's brutal.
The Peter King's first clip I saw and I was like, oh my gosh, that was nuts. And then I saw Tucker Wooding's drone clip of it.
Yeah.
Where you could see a kind of a different angle where he's kind of backdooring into the pipe barrel and man, free fall into the worst possible position ever at the worst possible time, just an insane wipeout. So it's a crazy day of chaos, but really big and perfect surf at Pipe the last day or two. So really exciting stuff.
Yeah, and you know, as I mentioned, I'm looking here, it looks like they could easily go on the first day, which is I believe the 29th, Monday the 29th.
Cool.
8 to 12 feet. Then the winds might get a little too strong in the afternoon, say from 3 o'clock on, but you never know over there, especially this far out regarding winds. So Monday looks good. Tuesday looks massive and out of control. So then so Monday and then Thursday looks super solid. Then there's a 4 to 6 foot day, which I would prefer we don't run on, because then Saturday, the weekend, is 8 to 10 feet. And then Monday, the 5th of February, is 8 to 12 and 10 to 15. I'm hoping they end this Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday run, even Thursday when it's 15 to 18. I would love for them to finish in some solid ones like what we've seen over the past 2 days, where there's chip in second reefers. Guys are just sitting out there, and those second reefers, you almost don't even have to paddle for them. You just flip and take one butterfly stroke and you're into it. And you just kind of do this setup bottom turn for the insane first, that first reef section that just heaves and throws. And it's going to be an exciting pipeline event. And I'm excited. I'm excited for the WSL. Look, you and I, especially you, poo-poo the CT and the WSL a little bit. And by the way, there's plenty of good reason for it. They've failed, mostly because of it's usually not because of this first event of the season. It's because of the last event of the season. And I'm looking forward to the WSL Lexus Pipe Pro, and I'm hoping that they do it in all of these solids forecasted waves.
Well, Pipeline still reigns supreme, and it's the show of the year. And I'd like to say thanks to all of the people who are filming it day in and day out, including the Surfline Stagnant cams, but like PK posting, literally on the beach from his camera, interneting it to his phone, and then uploading it in real time is insane. An insane gift for us. So thanks to those people doing that. As we look at pipe, though, of course, one of the things that has kept me engaged in recent years is Survival League. So SURFIVAL, Survival -League, simplified fantasy surfer. We've been playing the last 4 years, and it's super easy. It's $20 for the entire season. So $20 commitment. The grand prize is $7,000 and a 3-board quiver from Panda. You just pick one surfer per event. If that surfer makes it past the round of 32, you make it into the next event. If they don't, you lose, and you lose out for the rest of the season, and you can't play anymore. So you just got to pick one surfer past the round of 32, but you can only pick a surfer once a year. So you can't pick John for every event. You pick him once, and then you can't use him again. So pretty simple.
You know what? Panda, what's that gentleman's name again? He's
Blake Peters.
Yeah, Blake. He makes a sick Twinzer. And I'm big on the Twinzer. I'm a huge Twinzer guy.
Yep.
And so when I win, I'm going to want 3 different Twinzers.
Perfect.
Yeah.
You hear that, Blake?
I would be honored to ride Blake's boards, man. Those things look sweet.
Totally.
Who are you liking here in the SURF-IVAL? No, whoops.
The hyphens in between survival and league. Nice though. Nice try.
Charlie Taylor. SURFIVAL. SURFIVAL -league LEAGUE.com.
Yeah.
Survival League.
By the way, referral.
What's your strategy? By the way, you had a strategy last year. It was a good one. You did way better than I did. There's sort of 2 ways to look at this, and I'm going to hand this off to you for your strategy. But the one way is pick the guy who's best at those spots that we know, like say John at pipe, maybe Gabe at Chopu. And then there's some spots that are kind of wild cards where you're like, okay, who's the best competitor? Like a Kanoe Igarashi, who seems to always make it through that second round.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you determine those spots that there's a good guy. Then there's some wild cards locations where you're like, well, anybody could really, or Felipe at Rio is a great example of a surfer for the spot. So go ahead. I'll yield to you here.
I should also say, when you sign up for Survival League, use referral code SPIT for us to keep track of everything. SPIT. Very simple. So look, I'm going to implement the same strategy I implemented last year, even though it failed me. I've got a spreadsheet, and I've got how many events is that? 10 events? 10 events. And I've got 4 columns. My first ranked, who I would love for this event, my second pick for the event, my third pick for the event, and my 4th pick for the event. So essentially who I think will win the event. So at Pipeline, what that list looks like is John Florence, Gabriel Medina, Kelly Slater, Jack Robinson. Then I go down to Sunset and I do the same thing. And then I go through the list after the fact and I decide John, I put in first position 3 times. So I have to kind of prioritize where I want him actually to use him. Kelly, I only used 1 time. So you know what? even though Kelly's in the third spot at Pipeline, I'm not using him anywhere else on tour. So maybe I actually shift him into the first position at Pipeline so I could save John for Margaret River. That's kind of the strategy. So first, second, third, and fourth pick at every event, and then look at those lists and kind of rearrange priority wise. Because somebody like Baron Mamiya, I've got him listed as my second or my third pick for Sunset, but it's like I have Jack Robinson as my first pick for Sunset. I could use Jack Robinson elsewhere. Even though he's my first pick at Sunset, I can use him elsewhere. Baron Mamiya, I'm not going to use anywhere else. And maybe he won't win Sunset, but will he make it past the round of 32? Almost guaranteed.
Almost. I
Almost.
want to say, didn't Baron Mamiya he might have knocked me out last year in the very first event. I think I lost at Pipeline last year.
You lost with Seth Moniz.
Oh, that's right.
Which
One
was
of the pipe regulars. You'd think they'd be good.
And the finalist from the previous year in that incredible event with Kelly Slater. So that was like the safest possible. That was a smart play because you wouldn't have used Seth anywhere else.
Yeah, I did everything right. I did my part, damn it.
Oh, well. I know.
It's a lot of fun. Bottom line is it's fun. It's another way to be engaged. And yeah, so.
Well, that's my strategy. That's my strategy, but what's yours is the question.
I guess, well, my strategy is I kind of have a no strategy. Like I'm not going to sit down with a spreadsheet. I'm just going to, because what generally happens is, oh shit, that's right. I've got 3 hours to get my survival pick in. I better do it quick. And I just go, I don't know. And so I usually put more thought into the first event because we're talking about it and we've got time and, and I do like the idea of there are certain spots where we know there's guys that are good. And there's certain spots where it's like, I don't know, it could be a bit of a toss up, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So at Pipeline, you mentioned the 5 guys that make tons of sense. When you think about those 5 guys, then you ask yourself, okay, which guy has some life situations that I need to be aware of? A hip injury, a hip replacement. That's a bit scary. Although I will say that I've heard that the hip replacements is pretty easy to get recovery from. So Kelly's kind of, I actually like Gabe Medina at Pipe.
I like him everywhere, though. You know what I mean? So do you want to burn him at Pipe is the question.
I guess we're burning Jack Robinson. No, we want him at Margaret. Yeah,
or Sunset. You know what I mean? That's where it gets complicated.
Sunset's a wild card wave, in my opinion. Although there are guys like you want to stick with local Hawaiians that have surfed there and since they were 4 years old or whatever. So they know all the little nuances, all the little wedges that are going to back off, even, they look like they could be good waves and all that. So
Jack's won Sunset.
Yeah, Jack,
I mean, John would be a Sunset pick. There's safe picks for Sunset still.
I'm picking John for Pipe.
Okay.
And
I'm not telling you who I'm picking. I just told you my strategy, but I'm not telling you who I'm going to end up with.
Oh yeah, I blew it. I told you who.
That's all right.
Picking John.
Okay, good. I like it. It's a great pick.
Yeah.
Can't go wrong with John.
No, except for West and Margaret River. But I'm going to pick Jack Robinson for Margaret River.
Okay. All right. Well, if you make it past the first event this year, Scott,
that's right. I'm way ahead of myself.
Yeah. Right. Anyways, go Survival League. And like I said, referral code SPIT. That would be epic. And we will bid you well wishes in our attempt to get to the final and the $7,000 in the Panda surfboards.
You know what? We're going to take a break to help talk about our sponsors, pay the bills, and we'll be right back. And we're going to talk about
East.
Chloe and Dino.
Oh no, Stab in the Dark, not East.
Stab in the Dark.
Okay, cool. Stab in the Dark.
Stab in the Dark. Wow. Let me say that the first episode has dropped and I'm more psyched about this Stab in the Dark than I think I have been about any of them.
I literally wrote in my notes, this might be the single best episode of Stab in the Dark they've done in 9 seasons.
I totally agree with you. And I think a majority of the reason is Kalohe and Dino, who is an incredible communicator, an incredible surfer, and yeah, let's just start there. I mean, I'm just a huge fan of the sincerity and the thing with Chloe, you just feel like he's kind of like Jordy. Like you just feel like there's an authenticity and a sincerity and an honesty that there's no BS. Like he's not putting on any kind of anything. He's just like, I'm Chloe. Here we go. And oh, by the way, he's a very nice guy. I'm a huge fan. Like a lot of us know Kalohe as what we saw early on in his career, which was in the print magazines and was maybe sort of molded a little bit, which wasn't bad. But, you know, I guess the sad thing about the way we take in media is sometimes we remember the worst stuff and we don't remember all the good stuff. So we remember Chloe pounding his surfboard and being sort of like a little bit I don't want to say, I guess I'll say bratish, you know. And so there was just sort of like a unsavory feeling about him. But in the last 10 years, or the last 4 or 5 years, we've seen more Kalohe in front of the camera talking, and you're like, oh, this guy's a really good guy. And
Yeah.
it makes sense because it seems like his parents are, I don't know, his Dino's a really good guy. And he just seems like a kid that was brought up right. And granted, he was, you know, like all of us in Southern California, we have a lot of blessings. And but I'm just a fan of Kalohe. He rips. He's absolutely super fun surfer to watch, ride, and test out these boards. And yeah, I'm psyched. And oh, by the way, they're in great waves. And I'm super glad to hear they're going to a right, because when I first saw it, I'm like, oh man, it's going to be all backside, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I think, you know, it's good to mix it up.
Well, my experience with Chloe was not necessarily the bratish thing. But what I felt like throughout his entire career was that he was A, surfing to a criteria, and B, not saying and being all of who he wanted to be and what he wanted to say. He was confined and hamstrung by the box of his big moneyed contracts and what they expect of you, and wanting you to align your identity with their brand, and also the WSL or the ASP, and kind of what you're allowed to say on air. And then when he was doing free surf stuff, maybe edits, you don't want to deviate too far from the rest of your identity. So I just felt like we never got full Kalohe. And now I feel like he's taken all that stuff off, and I feel like he's been more of himself, you know, in the last year or two. And maybe even humbled, you know, by the fact that he never won an event on tour and he was expected to win world titles. And so that humbling might have even reset some of what you're identifying as, you know, bratishness. And so anyways, he's in his heyday right now. Hot girl moment for Chloe and Dino. But I agree. I think that the reason why this episode is so strong for Stab isn't just him. The graphics package, the cinematography is better than it's ever been. The entire look is incredible. The music, the editing, it was all top notch. Coming off of Italos, which I felt like was a complete miss, and also the Stab and the electric acid surfboard test recently, which I thought was a miss. This is just a complete reset and return to form, and again, the best version of it. They also stated in their comments section, we're going to do 2 weeks off in between episodes and we want your feedback. I think they were receiving the feedback from those previous seasons, and they're making adjustments with this one. They applied a lot of the adjustments, one of which was a much stronger focus on the shapers in this episode, you know, where they've done that in the past as well. But in the recent seasons, it was just kind of like a mention of the shapers. It's a cutaway from Kalohe entirely. It's a flash to 1988. Here's exactly what Chris Borst was doing in 1988. Here's where he intersected with Marcio Zuvi in San Diego. Here's a photo of them. Here's what was happening in the greater world. Here's what pop culture was doing. Here's what surfboards looked like prior. Here's what the innovations that they made. They create all of this context and appreciation for how we end up with this board that Kalohe and Dino's riding right now. So I think that focus on the shapers is a huge part of this, the success of this.
Yeah, well, that's a great point. I totally agree. Of course, you and I both are big into lifting up the shapers and the craft and building a surfboard, and the board builders, the designers, all of the hardworking individuals that go into making our boards. And so it's good that they're giving more of a highlight to the surfboard shapers, and it's interesting. That's the other side of it. Like,
It's
very
super
interesting.
That
And
well,
in fact, they could probably go deeper.
they absolutely could. I mean, here's the deal. I know about Pukas. I know about Marcio at Sharp Eye. I know a little bit about Chris Borst, but they taught me new things. In the short, like 90-second kind of thing that they did on the shaper, I learned more about those. And Matt Biolos, I learned more about them than I knew about previously. So they did an excellent job with it.
Here's a thought. Why not do one episode per shaper?
They
Kalohe riding the Borst, a full deeper dive on Borst, more waves ridden on the Borst board at more spots. Now, I know that means a lot more time involved and a lot more editing and a lot more of everything, on the back end that you and I wouldn't see as end user consumers. But boy, I think that would be pretty damn cool.
I
If
think
we
there's an
had,
opportunity. I think
yeah.
they can create the series as it exists currently. And what they've done in the past is have breakaway episodes in addition to that were focused on each individual board. And they had interviews with the shapers. And I think they did that with the electric acid surfboard test featuring Noah Dean when he was on the North Shore. So they released the full series. And then it was like week after week, they did a breakaway 3 to 4 minute where it was a lot of the B-roll clips and the wiping out, but then they interview Blake Peters from Panda and they say, what was the board designed for and what went wrong with the test. And he goes, oh, well, Noah had the wrong fins. And so you notice when he swapped out the fins, then he did these things instead. But, he was trying to do airs on the board and you're not supposed to really do airs on that board, stuff like that. So getting it straight from the shaper is really helpful.
Yeah, I think that would be fun if they did just one episode per board and allowed us to see Kalohe ride the boards in a wider variety of waves.
Yep. Well, here's the missive that they gave to the shapers, and I will explain who the shapers are as well. But the missive was mystery surfer. We're not going to tell you who he is, but he's 5'11". He weighs 177 pounds. Instructions: you can shape any board you like. Just use PU construction, please. FCS thruster plugs, please. The width, the thickness, the volume are all up to you. The rail shape, bottom curve, and tail are all open to your interpretation. The boards must be supplied completely blank without any markings, no decals, no branding, no size, no tech that reveals the identity of the board builder. And the cost is $0. Just supply 2 surfboards so we can promo one for our previous premium audience for the giveaway. So no cost to be involved in this, just 2 surfboard contribution, which I think is really cool. The surfboard shapers are Britt Merrick, 3-time winner, I believe, Pizel, 2-time winner, I believe, Matt Biolos, DHD, Sharp Eye, JS, Pukas, Chili, Hayden, Patterson, Rusty, Xanadoo, Borst.
Well, what it caught my ear when you were mentioning all of this is the boards come 2 stab clear.
That's what
with
it
no
says.
markings.
Yep.
Just like a board from Lost in a board box. So they pull it out and they have a clear board with no markings whatsoever. So I'm wondering about the chain of command, the chain of custody, from the time they take this clear board out with no markings and put it in the stab office to the time they take it to the artist that puts the number and in this case, I think it's a red little pin line or thick pin line around it. Like, I'd like to see the chain of custody
Worried that they're mixed up.
Maybe. I mean,
Oh,
who
no.
knows? I'm
There's no
throwing a major
chance.
conspiracy theory out there.
There is no chance.
I know. I'm just teasing.
So, highlights from episode 1. Xanadu got dispatched before it's even ridden. One of the failures of this series that they do is the unlucky 13. I don't know why they do this or who conceived of this, but Kaloe has to select one board upon first reveal of the boards. So before he's even ridden them, before he's even waxed them up, he has to pick one board that he just dispatches. This one's not going to work. And so the Xanadu he picked as the one that doesn't get to be ridden. And it's like, why put 13 shapers through this process if you're not going to give one of them a chance to be ridden? It seems insane.
Well, I agree. And I'll say this, that it's unfortunate for all of us because of all of those shapers. Xanadoo's the one guy where I'm like, that is cool that they included Xanadu. And that's like, that would be a incredible, I won't say dark horse, but his boards are the most, I think if you were allowed to look at all the boards and go tell me which one's the Xanadu, I think that would be the easiest one to do, because his noses have a little slippered rocker in them, and he's just a very unique shaper, and his boards are very unique. And I think Kalohe, and I think all of us, it would have been really cool to hear what Kalohe had to say and to see him ride a Xanadu. I'm just disappointed that because of that.
That's the disappointment is for us. Like,
yeah,
of all those boards, that was the board I wanted to see him ride.
Me too.
And for certainly because of who Xanadu is and what he's done, but also because Kalohe and Dino has ridden the same boards always and refined and refined and refined. It'd be great to see him on a complete curveball.
I totally agree. That's the one thing where I'm like, now we do know from past episodes, they will pick a surfer to then, I think, ride and do a critique on that. And so that'll be interesting to see who it is or how that plays out. But as you know, too, Xanadu was making boards for World Tour surfers in the 90s, even in the 80s, I want to say.
Yeah.
And so like Brad Gerlach, I believe, rode some Xanadu's on tour. There was quite a few guys. I know Xanadu would know, and I'm going to miss the names here. But my point is that although it's a wild card, it's not that much of a wild card. It's just he's a very unique designer. His boards, they stick out. And I've always been drawn to them aesthetically. They're unique.
And people love the boards who ride them. So yeah, that was kind of a major disappointment for me at the beginning of the episode. But the other big kind of moment in this was he's been riding Matt Biolos' surfboard since he was 7 years old. So I think for 24 years, he said, or something like that. Maybe. That was one of, when they do the blind test of like, try to identify which boards are from which shaper, he guessed 3 correct. One of them was the Biolos, and then he rode it and then came out of the water and was like, I'm 1000% sure this is the Biolos. And in fact, it's a board model that he has been working on with Biolos that isn't quite revealed yet, I believe. 3.0 sub or stub.
Sub driver
or stub, I forget which, but the 3.0 version of it that they've been working on. Anyways, Kalohe says, look, I'm going to disqualify this one. Like, I know this is Biolos and it'd be unfair. Like, this is like my right arm, essentially. Like, I know it would just be unfair. This is what I always ride. This is what feels familiar and comfortable to me. So it almost shouldn't. I'm glad that it was included in this because we want to pay, respect to Matt, but it would almost be unfair if I continue to ride it and judge everything else against it. So we're just going to push this one aside. So Matt Biolos and Xanadu are out of the competition.
A couple of things. My first thought is, why do we even include the shapers or the surfers shape of choice, right? Like, what a waste of time and energy, perhaps. But then if you dig deeper, if you didn't include Matt, everyone in the industry would be like, well, they didn't include Matt, so we know who the surfer must be. And then that information could get out to all the other shapers because they all talk. They're all going, yeah, I'm building a board for Stab in the Dark.
Yeah.
Oh, Matt's not building one. Matt wasn't invited. That's weird. Oh, it must be a Matt Ryder. Must be Kolohe. I'll build a board for Kolohe.
Yeah.
There's that, right? So I think that's one part of the strategy behind including the surfers shaper in the competition.
I think also, you if you have like, the world's best shapers, you want to include the world's best shapers. And so Matt is one of those. He's in that conversation. It would just be unfair to not include him simply because one of his team riders was the elected pilot. But it worked out perfectly in this scenario. Like, I love that it worked out this way. And I love that Kolohe was so transparent and he made a gentlemanly decision by, setting it aside, because really the competition, what we want to see is him experiencing new things. I mean, it's so great. This experiment, the reason why this episode was so strong, in addition to everything else, is that it delivered exactly what the initial premise of Stab in the Dark was, which is get on the Pukas, the board's a dog, and then get it in different waves. And oh my God, I just did the best turn of my life. What was that? Okay, let's try to figure this out and isolate this. But then I got on the Pyzel and it did this, and this a little bit differently. So I want to try it in other waves, and kind of going through all of that and confronting your own limitations or your own misunderstandings and trying to work past it and let the board speak. That is what this is all about.
And I think that's one of the reasons we're so charmed by Kolohe here is that he understands exactly what you just said. Like, he's on board. Like, he's like, I'm not riding I know this is a Matt, and let's get that out of the way because that's not what this is about. This is about me expanding my own vision of what a good surfboard could be, and about the shapers trying to find equal ground with me on that equal footing. So I agree with you. It's making tons of sense. Let me ask you this though: if Kolohe didn't know that was Matt's board, and Kolohe just said, "Yeah, this board felt good," blah blah blah, and he went through the competition, and at the end, Matt won, that would be a disappointment.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. In the end, Matt still wins. You know what I mean? Like, because Kolohe's profile gets raised. After this is over, Kolohe's still going to ride Matt's boards. Matt got plenty of screen time in this. So it's a win-win, I think, for everybody.
Totally agree. Excited about what's coming up now. So the Pyzel, he rode the Pyzel. It looked good to me. It looked real good.
Me too.
And he's undecided on that. The Pukas, as you mentioned, he bogged hard in the edit. It's funny, you watch the edit and you're like, God, they're just showing him eating it on purpose. I guess this board's going to be out and they want to show why it's going to be out. And then he moved up to a different break and just started ripping on it. And then he was like hemming and hawing. And then he was like, you know what? This board's in the final. I'm putting this board straight to the finals. Then he rode the Borst. By the way, I might not be in this exact order. He rode the Borst. It looked sparky, but there was some things he's undecided. I don't think he needs to ride that board in another wave. The Sharp Eye didn't like, it's out, no longer in the competition. The Mayhem we mentioned is out for reasons of loyalty. And the Xanadu is the unlucky 13, which is, as we mentioned, a disappointment.
He said the Sharp Eye is out, but he goes, this would probably be a really great board for somebody else, not just not for me. He mentioned a lot of thickness kind of in the mid range of the board.
Yeah.
And much more narrow nose and tail, and then also more kind of narrow towards the rails. So he just felt like it's designed
the foil maybe was too extreme from thick to thin. It didn't kind of have enough evenness is what he was talking about. His bottom turns, they felt real like a thick foam. And then when it released, it was just almost too much. And you could see it in the waves. I mean, in his bottom turns, there was some sticky moments where as he's in the middle of his turn up the mid face, there's some. I'm sure that everyone is like you and I. We watch what the board's doing under the person's feet. Is it flowing? Does it look comfortable, or does it look like he's tentative, that he's not sure if he should be bearing down and putting all his weight into the turn? And if he does it react too quickly? And there's all these things. And by the way, you mentioned the editing and how great this episode was. Some of that looking down view from up on the cliff looking down is really fascinating from looking at the surfboard's performance rather than just the level eye view. And so that extra vantage point is a bonus.
Best cinematography they've done in this series so far. Best a lot of things that they've done. So they pared it back in certain ways and just simplified it, but also went deeper into certain areas that I really appreciated. So congratulations to Stab. Amazing. Great job, Kaloe. Episode number 2 drops on February 6th. So like I said, every 2 weeks.
By the way, they offered Stab Premium members an opportunity to win, I think, one of the boards or some of the boards, or maybe all of the boards. I forget exactly. And you could go into their commentary section and put in who you think the winner will be, the winning shaper, who you think the 4 finalists will be, and who you think the unlucky 13 will be. And did you participate in this? Yeah.
No, I did not.
Do you think if they chose you that they would be like, oh, we're not going to give boards to David or Scott. Let's pick another winner. Do you think that would occur?
I have no idea why they would even do that to me or you, but I'd be okay if they did. I've got surfboards. Give them to somebody who has to pay full price for surfboards regularly.
Well, for the record, I want to win the boards. Count me out of that equation. I'm in. If I win, I want the boards.
Ask you a similar question though, because at the opening scene before the opening credits, even it's Chloe and Dino on the phone at the end of the week with a friend.
I think it's his dad.
Oh, it's his dad. Okay.
And he goes, so, but that was such a great tease.
Continue. He goes, dude, you're never going to believe who won. And then they bleep it and cut to black and then come back and you hear the reaction of the person on the other end of the phone. Like, no way. That's incredible. And Chloe laughing. Based on that interaction and response, do you have any indication on who wins?
Well, based on that, I'm thinking it might be Hayden.
Interesting. Yeah, you're right. Okay, because what's funny is based on that, I thought Xanadu.
Right. One of the full wild cards.
Full wild card, exactly. And then when I saw Xanadu got, dispatched, I was like, okay, well, that opening scene, maybe it's mayhem. Maybe it's not the wild card, and it's in fact the most obvious choice. And that's why they were responding that way. But then mayhem got dispatched. So then I was just like, oh man, I have no clue who's going to win this. But you're right. It could be Hayden.
It could be Hayden because there's this, I think within the surfboard building industry, there's some jealousy and some envy of how well Hayden's done, Yeah. So there might be some, you wouldn't believe because and again, I'm just riffing with you here. I don't know what's going on in Chloe's
I like it though.
But I think it could be Hayden.
I like it. I'm going to go back and rewatch that scene.
Yeah. It's such a moment of, oh my God, we've been talking shit on this guy for so long and he won. That was kind of the vibe I got. Like you know what? All the shit we've been talking about, how lame his boards are. But again, that's just me making that up based on whatever's between my ears, which could be total bullshit and probably is.
Hayden's gotten short shrift too in this competition. I think the year that Jordy was the test pilot, he broke the Hayden like in the very first session, so it never even really got to get ridden. So it'd be kind of poetic for him to come back and win something like this. But
I agree. I think it'd be cool if it was Hayden. I'm kind of like, I think it would be fun.
Totally. But I mean, you and I are wrapped by this series.
I am. I'm totally involved. And oh, by the way, sadly, it's got me to that place where I'm like, maybe I could ride one of these boards, like right now, my little chippy performance board is a CI every day, which I love. It's a little wider. It's got a little bit more like middle-aged man vibe to it,
Yeah.
but I keep thinking to myself, maybe I could go a little sexier, and every time I do that, I fail, but
Well,
we'll see. But, oh, and the other thing is, oh, I forgot. Go ahead.
well, maybe it'll come to you when I deliver this detour to what you were talking about, but I've said it before, but I want to restate it here. There's a branding opportunity, collaboration opportunity for you and Sharp Eye. You're talking about the board that you want right now and the adjustments off of other boards that you like.
Yeah.
They have a model with Felipe Toledo called the 77.
Yeah.
You do hard 75.
That's right.
The Sharp Eye Hard 75. It's a modified high performance shortboard designed for a guy who hits the gym 2 times a day, surfs every day, foils sometimes.
Here's the deal. I actually bought a Sharp Eye for Indo last year
I remember that.
from Rob. I think it was the 77 plus.
Mm.
Took it to Indo. When I got it, I was like, this thing feels too thin. Like it just feels, they think I'm 25 years old or something.
Mm.
And every Sharp Eye I've ever seen, they're just so blady they're just like, they don't build boards for middle-aged men, even if they think they are, you know what I mean?
Well, those
So
middle-aged
the
men
Sharp Eye
at
didn't
Sharp
go
Eye.
good for me. And I think I gave it to my son
Okay.
who wrote it and of course wrote it well. But I would love to get back in with Marcio and do something that makes sense for me and the hard 75 and the Sharp Eye 77. Because I'm looking for another one of those boards for Indo. I'm looking for my Indo trip to have a board that will paddle me around, but will also allow me to surf as high performance as this 58-year-old body will allow me.
Okay. Well, I just want credit for whatever commissions you make off the sales of that board. I need like 3% just for coming up with the name.
I'll have them make me 2 boards, one for you, one for me.
Perfect. Thank you.
See what happens.
Oh,
Let me say this. I remember now. So I did fill out the form to win the boards and I chose Rusty. I hope Rusty wins the thing, mostly because Rusty's a good friend of mine and I'm a big fan of what they're doing now. And they've got some sick surfboards. And in fact, my son brought one of the Rusty, I think the San Diego Pro model, to Indo last year and absolutely loved it. And so I'm hoping that Rusty wins, but based on what we saw in the tees, that doesn't feel like it's a Rusty, does it? It feels like it's something way out of left field. The winner is going to be a left fielder like a Borst or a Hayden.
I mean, Rusty fits with that conversation too. It could be a Rusty.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, it's a legacy brand, but they don't have any tour surfers anymore,
Yeah.
Wade Carmichael, I think, was the last. Well, very interestingly,
wasn't Kyle riding Rusties? Or no, he was riding Xanadoos.
He was riding Rusty's most recently.
Yeah.
He shifted to Rusty off Xanadu. So very interestingly, we're an hour into the show. You teased the news topics for this week, and there's one major news story that neither of us have pointed to.
Oh my. Please.
And that might be the actual news story, is that we are not talking about the Nazare Big Wave Challenge that took place 2 days ago.
Yeah, I do not care. I tried to watch it. I just don't care. It's boring. It's not engaging. It's nothing I can relate to. I can watch it all. I've seen every ride that's ever going to happen at Nazare, and they've already happened. You know what I mean? Like they're all.
It's like watching a wave. It's like watching another surf ranch ride.
It is. In a weird way, it is. It's just real monotonous and real predictable, and it's just one of those waves that what's actually happening out there doesn't translate. And like the heart rate that's in those surfers' bodies and in the drivers of those skis isn't translatable to our eyeballs, because the real power of that thing is how friggin' scary it is. And after you watch it 100 times sitting in your home office, you're kind of like, yeah, all right, I'd rather watch something else And so I tried to watch it, was not engaged.
Well, I fully agree with you. Brendan Buckley did a recap on Stab Magazine, and I think that he summed it up best in his opening paragraph by saying something to the effect of, it's more in the crowd on the beach watching this event, there's more non-surfers than there are surfers. And that's the opposite of almost any other surf contest that you go to. So it's mainly viewed by people who don't know surfing, and it's just a spectacle to them. But he also stated that it's probably the only profitable event for the WSL, and that's why it continues to run every single year. It can run in one day. It has main, big non-endemic moneyed sponsors who support it. And so that's probably why it continues to go every year. But just to give them justice, Lucas Chianca won on the men's side, Maya Gabiero won on the women's side, and Team Lucas Chianca and Pedro Scooby won the team award. That's about it.
I have something that was sent to me that is semi-interesting. And let me just state this. This is a legal decision that occurred in California a couple of days ago, and it has to do with surfing and surfing collisions in the water. And again, I'm reading verbatim here. 3 surfers were surfing small Miramar in Santa Barbara over the summer. Surfer 1 was on the wave first. Surfer 2 snakes surfer 1. Then surfer 3 snakes surfer 2. Surfer 2 has to straighten out. He's in between surfers 1 and 3. And surfer 3 wipes out, and his board hits surfer 2, the first snaker, causing what sounds like a pretty gnarly gash in surfer 2's head. Not too surprising in this day and age, surfer 2 sues surfer 3. Now, the legal ramifications are this. The trial court, the initial court, throws out the case. It goes to the appeals court. The appeals court throws out the case. You can't sue. Why? Because colliding surfers and colliding surfboards, including those without a leash, are an inherent risk in the sport of surfing, according to the court. So there's no suing unless you're going to go to the Supreme Court. Unless you take your case all the way to the Supreme Court, you cannot sue for getting injured by a surfboard when you're surfing, unless, of course, there's criminal intent or mens rea, or like there, it was done on purpose. You can prove that it was done on purpose. Perhaps the most interesting aspect of this is that Sean Thompson was an expert for one side of the equation, and Ian Cairns was an expert for the other side of the equation. They were both paid experts. So
wow, this sounds made up, and this sounds like I don't know, like a scene out of Idiocracy or something, that we would end up in court over this. Something that happens all day, every day, in every surfing lineup. By the way, I applaud the judges and the ruling on this. They are absolutely right. This is a waste of taxpayers' time and money and everybody involved. There's actual crime happening out in the world, and this was not a crime. Also, the idea that surfer number 2 burned somebody and then got pissed because somebody burned him and fell and got hit. He is the offender. If he never burned anybody in the first place, he never would have got hit in the head by somebody else's board. Idiot.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of instant karmic reaction occurring.
Exactly. What an interesting story. I mean, yeah, insane. Hilarious that Sean Thompson took
I don't know which side of the equation either one of those were on, but my
Doesn't
gut
even
is going to
matter.
tell me that Sean was on the side of you should be allowed to sue, and Ian Carnes is on the side of you shouldn't be allowed to sue. But again, I just made that up. I haven't looked into that. I don't know that to be the case. We'll see.
So the other thing here, the court needs, you need to be able to prove rightness and wrongness, intent, a bunch of other things that you and I have been trying to tease apart for 10 years on the podcast, and we haven't been able to. There's no way that a non-surfing court is going to be able to say who has, quote, right of way on that wave. You know, there's just, it's way too complicated and convoluted a thing based on one's own personal perception in the lineup and their own, etiquette, that
Yeah.
the court can't mandate a rule here, a ruling.
No, and this was more about, regardless of, this was like a no fault thing, like a car accident. Like, look,
I have damages that need to get paid.
yeah, I have damages that need to get paid, and it's this guy caused the damages. I'm not saying that he did it, like I said, with intent or malice or anything like that, but it happened and it's his fault.
Yeah. Well, my analogy here is, if it was the car accident, surfer number 2 is going the wrong way on the road. So it was their fault if they ended up in a crash.
It was a dirt road. There were no signs. It was in the middle of the desert. In fact, there were no roads. There was just 3 vehicles.
Exactly. That's exactly what surfing is. And so you're out there off-roading and these things happen.
Yeah.
Don't be a dummy.
My must-see moment by Treeswax is, I urge all of you, if you haven't done so already, go to surfline.com, their YouTube page. Just Google Pipeline January 22nd, Pipeline January 23rd live, Surfline. Search that on YouTube. It'll come up, and then you can scrub all the way to the last, say, 5 or 8 minutes, 10 minutes, and it'll be the highlights of each day. Put it up on your big screen in your living room and just be mesmerized by all that is incredible pipe, with the incredible pipe specialist ripping. You mentioned a bunch of guys. I also saw Jamie O'Brien. I saw Mason Ho. I recognized Koa Smith. And of course, there's a host of others. I think Noah Bashin. There's just a bunch of guys ripping.
My must-see moment, presented by treeswax.com, the only petroleum-free surf wax on the market. Treeswax is Tucker Wooding's Instagram account, which I mentioned that drone clip of Iyala Dala wiping out at Pipeline. Tucker is committed to perfecting that drone clip at Pipe. So imagine if you were a water photographer at Pipe and you sit right there in the channel. This is 20 yards closer to the peak and 10 yards up into the sky. And he just hovers that thing and waits. And as a set comes in, he starts tracking it, and you see which surfer makes its way through the crowd. And you see that surfer scratching to their feet and getting up, and you see the undulations in the wave and them navigating it. And he then backs up the camera, flies the camera back as the wave's breaking, and you get to see people get spit out. He is killing it with that drone shot, and I'm seeing versions of Pipeline that I've never seen before. So Tucker Wooding's Instagram account.
Okay, so look, we've got the Pipeline event coming up. It's surfivalleague.com. So surfival-league.com. Mention Spit. And that way we get a referral.
Referral code SPIT.
Referral code SPIT. And get a chance to win $7,000 and a 3-board Twinzer quiver from Blake at Panda. And it looks like Pipe's going to happen maybe Monday. I'm hoping. And there's plenty of good swell and conditions on tap for Pipeline.
The most exciting show of the year, Pipeline.
David, we've had a great show. We've said a lot. Until next time, adios and aloha.